Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen, Archuleta, Atkins, Bates, Becker, Borges, Bradford, Caballero, Cortese, Daly, Dodd, Durazo, Eggman, Glazer, Gonzalez, Grove, Hertzberg, Wesso, Hurtado, Jones, Kamwager, Laird, Leyva, Limon, McGuire, Melendez, Min, Newman, Nielsen, Ochoa Bogue, Pan, Portantino, Roth, Rubio, Skinner, Stern, Umberg, Wojciechowski, Wiener, Wilk.
Members, a quorum is present with the members and our guests beyond the rail. Please stand. We'll be led this afternoon, and in the gallery, we'll be led in prayer this afternoon by Senator Laird, after which we're going to ask you to remain standing. We'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Senator Wiener. Senator Laird.
Thank you, Mr. President. God of many colors, you once set your rainbow high in the sky to be a sign of the life-giving covenant between you and your creation. Let this symbol of faithfulness resonate with us as we renew our relationships with each other and you during this season of Pride. Creator God, we thank you for our LGBTQ+ allied diversity, because these colorful expressions of life let us see your many faces. Although many, we come together as one in you. May all of us be attentive to those who are excluded in our world. Let us manifest your unconditional love by our extravagant hospitality and appreciation for the diversity each person brings. Let us not be complicit by our silence in the continuation of heterosexism, homophobia, and transphobia. And let us sing with sweet honey in the rock. I am sitting here, wanting memories to teach me, to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I think on the things that made me grow into a being full of pride. I think on these things, for they are true. Amen.
Please join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance.
Members, without objection, we're going to move to consideration of Senate Resolution 39. It's file item 22. Senator Eggman, are you prepared? Just one moment. We're waiting for Senator Eggman to get ready. Get the podium ready for it.
Good afternoon, members.
Madam Secretary, please read.
Senate Resolution 39 by Senator Eggman, relative to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ+ Pride Month.
Thank you. Senator Eggman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Senators. Today, I rise as Vice Chair of the California Legislative LGBT Caucus to present Senate Resolution 39, which recognizes June 2001 as LGBTQ Pride Month. As many of us know, Pride was inspired by an uprising at the Stonewall Inn in June of 1969, and it sparked a liberation movement, a call to action that continues to inspire us all to live to our nation's promise of equality, liberty, and justice for all. Pride is an opportunity to reflect on the trials of LGBTQ+ community has faced and to rejoice in the triumphs of trailblazing individuals who have bravely fought and continue to fight for full equality. Our community has achieved remarkable progress since Stonewall. Landmark Supreme Court rulings have struck down discriminatory laws, proclaimed marriage equality, and established workplace protections for LGBTQ+ people. But in 2021, there's still much work to be done. We know up and down the state, there has been an attempt to fly flags over city halls, and still we hear outrage and still we hear pushback from these basic things of flying a pride flag. We know there are many states in which LGBTQ plus individuals still face fundamental lacks of protections in healthcare, education, employment, and other public accommodations. Our nation continues to witness a tragic spike in violence against transgender and women of color and other gender diverse people. We cannot forget that our communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and many of us have suffered from food insecurity, poverty, and inadequate access to health care. We cannot forget that the community members of color, particularly our Black and Latino LGBTQ plus community members, have suffered the most. This Pride Month, we will celebrate, but we will also continue to fight for equitable recovery, for our community's care, and for an investment in our community healing. We have a bag here for you, members, that you'll be able to share gifts from the caucus. There's a QVC code on the outside, so you can be able to watch our ceremony of our awardees, which will be done later on this week. And in respect out of COVID, we still want to recognize the contributions of Californians of the LGBT plus community around the state. As we continue to condone intolerance and fight against injustice, I always reflect on the Pride Month and the rainbow flag and what that symbolizes. When the movement first started in 1969, there wasn't one symbol that kind of unified what this was about. And as for any movement, when you try to think about what a symbol will be that will rally people together and summarize what your movement is about, they were, should it be the pink triangle that was put on people when they were sent to camps during the Holocaust? Should it be the lambda signal? What should it be? And in 1978, Gilbert Baker in San Francisco was looking out at a celebration that had just begun and just saw the beautiful rainbow of everybody that was out there and the joy and the celebration and a place to be where they could be. And at that moment, he thought, that is it. It's a rainbow representing all that we are. I reflect on all of us, whether you get your strength from wherever you may get it. The service in my church this weekend was about Job and the storm and having faith that you get through that kind of thing. And for many of us, seeing that rainbow flag was a symbol that we were welcome somewhere. That flag was come into effect in 1979. That's the year I graduated from high school. And I can tell you, going around the country as a young person, being, it was not okay to be out. You did not feel welcomed out. But if you saw a little rainbow in a corner of a store, you felt like that was a place you could go, that you would be safe for a while. Just like the Green Book in the African American community, we had pride books that you could go around, places that were friendly, places that were comfortable, and if there was that little rainbow symbol, it was like a code, you knew you were okay. And that our movement has evolved to a place where we hang the flag above city halls, and it tells us we don't have to look in the corners and in the alleys for places that we might be safe, that our very governments, at the very seats of our democracy, says that we count too, and that we can celebrate all of our diversity in who we are. That's what this Pride is about. That's what the rainbow celebrates, and I invite you to join with us tonight at 8 p.m. The Capitol Dome, just for the second time, will be lit up with the rainbow colors. So if you'd like to come out and watch that, we'd love to have you. And again, you can look at the QVC code in accepting our gifts, and then also to see our nominees. So SR 39 affirms Pride Month as a celebration of diversity, delivering on the promise of full equality for LGBTQ plus families like my own. And at the present time, or at the time, I'd like to ask for your aye vote on this measure.
Thank you, Senator Eggman. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I, too, would like to say thank you to the LGBTQ Caucus and many of our colleagues here who every day fight for not just the LGBTQ communities, but all of the communities. They happen to be our amazing, incredible colleagues of the LGBTQ communities that really do this incredible work. We need to continue supporting them and their efforts. But like myself, a senator from Long Beach, that has a very large and robust LGBTQ community. We have our own Harvey Milk Park. That is a center of celebration for many local LGBTQ leaders. And every day, as an ally, I want to ensure that I'm fighting for them, their voices, their children, their families, so we can create better and stronger generations of equality for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Weiner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise as a gay man and as the senator who has the honor of representing the great city of San Francisco, excuse me, in support of Senate Resolution 39. You know, when I think of the rainbow, the wonderful rainbow, the masks that people are wearing today and the flag, I remember back to when I first came out as a gay man in 1990, many years ago now, and I remember my aunt, who was an out lesbian, who came out in the 1960s when being LGBTQ was still classified officially as being a mental health condition. She gave me what was then called the Pride or Freedom Rings. It was like a rainbow necklace. That was a thing back in 1990. It's not really a thing anymore, but it was a thing back then. And she gave it to me, and she said, "This is a symbol of our community, and you should wear this with pride." And I think back to 1990, when there was no effective treatment for HIV, and members of our community were dying en masse with very little attention from the federal government. There really were almost no civil rights protections. I think there was one state at the most that had a civil rights law in a few cities. California certainly had no protections at that point in time. It was still categorically illegal to be an LGBTQ person serving in the United States military. It was a crime still. It was pre-Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was simply a crime. We were really struggling as a community, and I think over the last 30 years, what's happened in terms of laws that have been passed, particularly here in California, and just societal attitudes towards our community. The fact that in recent polling, 55% of Republicans support marriage equality. Things are changing, but as things change, we need to acknowledge that we are so not there yet. When we look across the country right now and see that there are people, states in this country, and state legislatures, politicians who are trying to score political points on the backs of trans children by trying to ban them from playing sports, by trying to ban them from seeking health care. This is in 2021 that there are politicians who think it's acceptable somehow to try to score political points on the backs of children, the most vulnerable children in our society. We continue to see HIV not under control in various parts of our community, particularly among in the Black community, and particularly in the South, where we've not done enough. We continue in California to criminalize the LGBTQ community, and the fact that we continue to have to do this legislative work shows that even here in California, we're not quite where we need to be. But with all of that said, I am so proud of the progress that we've made as a society, and particularly here in California. I'm so proud of our LGBTQ caucus, a growing caucus, that more and more members of our community feel comfortable running for office and are able to get elected to office, not just in the amazing city of San Francisco, but in places like Stockton, in places like Riverside, in places like San Jose, in places all over this state that have not traditionally been viewed as LGBTQ epicenters, but are stepping up and embracing our community. And so, colleagues, thank you so much for all of your support for our community. It really warms my heart knowing that I am surrounded by colleagues who are so supportive. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Senator Pan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, as chair of the Asian Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus, I am honored to rise in solidarity with the LGBTQ caucus in support of SR 39, recognizing June 2021 as LGBTQ Pride Month. The LGBTQ community has elevated California and the nation through their contributions. They are California's and America's leaders, role models, and valued community members of today and future. I would make note that in our own caucus, the vice chair of our API caucus is also chair of the LGBTQ caucus, and that we also have additional members, Alex Lee, who in the API caucus, who also identify as LGBTQ. We have many leaders in the API community who are also identified as LGBTQ, including Japanese-American actor George Takei, Korean-American comedian Margaret Cho, and Chinese-American poet and playwright Kit Yen are just a few examples. I also want to recognize Equality California's Executive Director Designate, Tony Wong, who is the organization's first API and Vietnamese American executive director. While the LGBTQ community has been and continues to be essential to improving our state and country, LGBTQ plus people are still facing discrimination in our society today, including those who also identify as Asian Pacific Islander. A study released in 2019 by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation found that API LGBTQ plus youth are at heightened risk for discrimination at home and at school. The study found that only 19% of API LGBTQ plus youth could say they could definitely be themselves at home, while only 29% said they could definitely be themselves at school. Although many public pride celebrations have been canceled due to the COVID pandemic, our inclusive state must continue to encourage the advancement of equality for all LGBTQ plus people in California, in this nation, and in this world. I know that, as my good friend from San Francisco has pointed out, unfortunately, this fight is clearly an ongoing one. It's certainly not over, and I respectfully ask for your support and vote for SR 39. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I stand as the Vice Chair of the Women's Caucus in support of SR 39. And I wanted to note that I feel particularly proud of California and our governor, Governor Newsom, having been the person that really stood up to the foes of gay marriage by initiating weddings at San Francisco City Hall on Valentine's Day, and I can't remember the exact year. And then subsequently, California voters, after first rejecting that action, then approving it and allowing love to reign supreme and marriage for people who love each other. In the late 90s, I remember when my daughter came out to me, she was in high school, and a little bit thereafter, there was, some of you may remember the show, The Teletubbies. And one of the key Teletubbies was Tinky Winky. Tinky Winky was purple. And Tinky Winky's antenna, all the Teletubbies had televisions in their bellies, and Tinky Winky's antenna was shaped like a triangle. That caused a prominent evangelical to call Tinky Winky gay. So I thought, oh, I was going to be so clever. I will give my daughter, for whatever that holiday was that year, I gave her the Tinky Winky. And she looked at me and she goes, Mom, I don't play with toys. And I'm like, well, come on, what is it? It's, the symbol. And she's like, oh, pff. So it's just a demonstration of how the generations changed. And my daughter and her wife just brought me my first grandbaby. So I'm very thrilled about that. But now I want to talk about a more serious issue, which is that as many strides as we've made, and they are incredible, we have so many elected LGBTQ people. We've got Stephanie Byers, who's the first openly trans Native American elected to a state house. We have I don't want to name so many, because in our legislature, in the Senate, in the US, in the Congress, in every state house, so it's incredible. But homophobia still reigns large in our country. And it, like so many things, is more significantly against women. And I'm not trying to minimize the homophobia against gay men or against even trans men. But women are the targets of violence. LGBT women at much higher rates. And as a percent as compared to straight women, 44% of lesbians experience rape, physical violence, or stalking, compared to 35% of straight women. And amongst the trans community, 90% of trans women have experienced a violent assault. So there's much work for us to do. But again, I'm so proud of the strides that we have made, and that I would never have to, that hopefully no one would have to have the experience that I did, which I have talked upon at this floor, where I learned about my very famous aunt, Eleanor Tennant, Teach Tennant, one of the first tennis champions in the US, who was openly, more or less openly out, considering the times. This was the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I learned about her by reading a book. She was my paternal great aunt. I had never heard of her. But I confronted my father, and they said, well, we don't talk about her. Later, of course, I learned why. Because she was gay. And when I read her obituary in the LA Times, it described that she died with no living relatives. So hopefully we are past that point, and that's what our quest is, and that's why we need to do resolutions like this today, and that's why we need to celebrate Pride Month, and thank you.
Thank you. Senator Archuleta.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I rise today as chair of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee to express support for Senate Resolution 39, which proclaims June 2021 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month. It is important that we acknowledge the cultural contributions of our LGBTQ community members in order to accurately reflect who we are and who we strive to be as a state and as a nation. When we teach our children to respect one another and to recognize the common good in all of us, we must mean to inclusively teach them about every member of our community, no matter where they come from. It means acknowledging the contributions of our great state and nation that LGBTQ community members have made in every field of endeavor: the arts, the sciences, the academia, public policy, and the armed services. It wasn't until 2011 that openly gay, lesbian, bisexual men and women who were permitted to serve in the military, and since then they have led the way in opening doors of opportunity for everyone in the military who they come across, and serving with honor, pride, and dignity. In every unit, department, or branch, members of the LGBTQ+ community have excelled, and they must be acknowledged for their courage, pride, and leadership. And acknowledging where we have advanced and further promoted the principles of equality and justice for all, we must also acknowledge our shortcomings, because the work must continue on. We have a long way to go in eradicating the prejudice and the discrimination of our LGBTQ+ community and their members. And to that end, wherever there is a way to advance the cause of equality, our work absolutely must continue. Whether it is equality in our workplace, full marriage and benefit rights to same-sex couples, or allowing our LGBTQ+ military service members to protect our state, our nation, openly with pride, we must continue to advance the cause of equality, because we owe equality as much in our future to our generations as we do to those in the present who look to our legislation, our Senate, us here in Sacramento to support everyone equally and fairly. I want to thank the senator from Stockton for introducing SR 39 and respectfully ask your aye vote, and to those who served and those who are continuing to serve, a job well done. I ask for your support and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of SB 39, which declares the month of June as LGBTQ Pride. Marsha P. Johnson, one of the gay activists credited for pushing back against police brutality against the New York gay community, which sparked the Stonewall riots, once said, "How many years has it taken people to realize that we are all brothers and sisters and human beings in the human race?" Sadly, we still don't know the answer to this question. According to data by the FBI, hate crimes against sexual orientation are the third largest category after race and religion. Even here in the progressive state of California, the LGBTQ+ community finds itself the target of hateful, bigoted rhetoric and actions to this very day. I'd like to share a recent event that happened in my district. Kingsburg City Council member Joel Hurtado proposed a very similar resolution to declare June as Pride Month and raise the pride flag at City Hall. During the City Council meeting, hundreds of people, including the hate group known as Proud Boys, descended upon the Kingsburg City Hall for more than 4 hours of public comment. Sadly, most to express their opposition to the resolution and to say vile and hateful words, many of them using religious references. Despite the heartfelt pleas for support and the advocacy of Councilmember Hurtado, proponents of the resolution were significantly outnumbered, and it failed to pass. It even failed to get a second by a fellow council member. This is why this resolution is so important to me personally. By declaring June as Pride Month, we are sending a message to the LGBTQ plus members of our small communities, small rural communities, and city council members like Councilmember Hurtado, that you are loved, you are supported, and we value you. We must lift up and celebrate the LGBTQ community and educate others that it's okay to break norms and be who we are, and that we are a stronger person for doing so. I want to thank my good colleague from Stockton for bringing this resolution today, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Senator Laird.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think for many of us that arrived here in the Senate, we never think that we're going to be part of history or that something we did as an individual will be something that is part of a larger movement. We think it just might be a difficult situation that we faced ourselves and many times alone, and made a decision in that context that really made a difference and added with others, fundamentally changed things. And to build on what was said earlier, as one of the older members of the Senate, when I graduated from college, it was illegal to be gay in all 50 states. Illegal. You could be arrested or cited in all 50 states, much less job protections or anything else. And it's been interesting that many senators have referenced the Stonewall incident, and yet it was not doctors, it was not lawyers, it was not elected officials. It was really rank and file people that didn't think they had much to lose that sort of started down the street of standing up and changing things. And, you know, I was just become a county employee in the 1970s when Santa Cruz County became the first county in the United States to ban discrimination among its employees on the basis of sexual orientation. And in 1975, when they did that, that was a remarkable feeling of freedom, of not looking over your shoulder, of feeling you could be clear about being yourself. And when the first marches in my hometown happened in those years, we had more demonstrators than we had marchers. We had to hire private police officers to march with us for our safety, just marching in public down the street. And in this room was a dramatic moment in the 1970s that removed the Sodomy Law from California. It was deadlocked here 20-20. That deadlock had to be held for hours for the lieutenant governor to fly in from out of state to cast the tie vote to make that happen. And for those of us that lived through the AIDS crisis, there are certain parts of it that were really public. But as somebody who was the executive director of an AIDS agency at the height of the epidemic before the drug cocktail, there were civil rights issues that happened with it. I can't tell you the times that a family that was estranged would swoop into town and sweep up half of a house, or would go to the hospital and deny visiting rights to the spouse in the last days of somebody's life, just because the rights weren't recognized. And I think that it's interesting because we have big debates about incremental change and what to do. And there was a time when the Supreme Court acted in Vermont and said that they had to have domestic partners benefits based on sexual orientation and equality. And Vermont legislators, even though it was under order from the Supreme Court, lost their seats in the next election for voting for that. And within a matter of years, domestic partners became the conservative viewpoint with regard to marriage equality. And so it is so important that everybody be clear, stand up, and I think it is everybody that made this happen. There might have been a cadre of people that stood up at the beginning or along the way or were clear, but it was many people, and we saw the broad support in this room that has really made the difference. And it is now. I spent 2 extensive days this weekend in San Luis Obispo County doing 17 things now that we can do things. And I went to the Grover Beach City Hall and saw the pride flag. I went to the Arroyo Grande City Hall and saw the pride flag. But I went to the Gala Diversity Center in downtown San Luis Obispo, that had its sign defaced and destroyed just 2 weeks ago, and stood with them to let them know that they were not alone. And that is all still the debate of what is happening now. So this resolution is important. It is important to constantly put a stake in the ground, to say we're there, we've come a long way, but we still have things to do. So I proudly ask for an aye vote on SR 39.
Thank you. Senator Min.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, I want to thank the LGBT Legislative Caucus for bringing this resolution forward. Like my colleagues, I rise in strong support of SR 39, which is fundamentally a celebration of the great progress that we have made in this country and in this state. Progress that we even see in Orange County, of all places. The LGBT Center of Orange County just celebrated its 50th anniversary. Cities like Irvine, Anaheim, Costa Mesa, Laguna Beach, and yes, even Huntington Beach are now flying the pride flag in celebration of this month. So yes, progress is happening. Yes, it is so delightful and exciting, and I'm proud to stand as an ally with the LGBT community, as a member of the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus, but also just as somebody who cares about the future that my kids are going to grow up in. But let's make no mistake, we still have a lot of work to do. There are those who want to turn back the clock on progress. There are those that would seek to divide us based on who we are or who we love. And so as leaders in this state's body, let us not forget our mission to try to unite people, to recognize that love is love, to try to defend the gains we've made against those who would try to turn back the clock on progress. I urge your aye vote on SR 39.
Thank you. Senator Durazo.
Thank you, Mr. President. As chair of the Latino Legislative Caucus, it is my honor to rise today in support of SR 39. I'm proud to have grown up in a union, the hospitality, food service, hotel workers, clearly one of the most, if not the most progressive union, especially on LGBTQ rights. That's how I grew up in the labor movement, alongside members like Cleve Jones. During Pride Month, we recognize the resilience and the determination of so many individuals who have fought and continue fighting to simply live their lives freely and authentically. LGBTQ Latinos are major contributors also in everything from arts and politics and the social justice movements, from the famous Mexican painter Frida Kahlo to Jose Julio Sarria, the first openly gay candidate to run for public office in this country. We also applaud Sylvia Rivera, who fought for the inclusion of transgender people into the larger movement for gay rights. And then we fast forward, and we had just recently the Honorable John Perez, the first openly gay speaker in the California legislature, Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, the first openly gay constitutional officer of our state. And let's not forget to celebrate our leader, who has been both Speaker and Pro Tem of our Senate, Senator Tony Atkins. The Pride Month, as we recognize, this Pride Month, as we recognize the many contributions of LGBTQ plus individuals across our nation, as a caucus, we reaffirm our fight against all forms of discrimination and injustice. Even though historic Supreme Court rulings in recent years struck down regressive laws and affirmed the right to marriage equality and secured some workplace protections for individuals, there have been recent efforts to roll back some of those hard-fought victories. In some states, LGBTQ individuals still lack protections for fundamental rights that many of us take for granted. We also continue to witness a tragic spike in violence against transgender women of color and youth who are disproportionately at risk of harm. I'm still haunted, as many of you are, by tragedies such as the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando in 2016, where 49 people were senselessly murdered and 53 injured because they were trying to enjoy a night out. Their only fault was deciding to attend a gay nightclub that evening. So as we celebrate LGBTQ Pride Month, we must all be diligent and steadfast in our commitment to help end violence and discrimination against the LGBT community, all communities, so we can ensure a just and equitable America for all. Thank you very much, and I support SR 39.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, Senator Kamlager.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today as Vice Chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus to support SR 39 in solidarity with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. You know, last weekend, I visited the site of the Cooper Donut riots. It happened actually in my district, and the riots it was a small uprising in response to police harassment of LGBTQ people in 1959. That was 10 years before the Stonewall riots. And this was during the time of McCarthyism, anti-communism, and the blacklisting, when in fact so many LGBTQ men and women were put on those lists because they were deemed a security risk by this country. That was then. And I know that some people believe that in 2021, anti-LGBTQ discrimination doesn't exist. They might think we can stop talking about our history of making LGBTQ folks second-class citizens, that we can stop having our parades, that we can stop waving our flags. But I would remind those folks that it was only in 1978 when voters considered passing the Briggs Initiative, which would have banned gay teachers from teaching in our public schools. It was the 1980s when AIDS ravaged communities of gay black men, and our government didn't even track the number of deaths. Instead, they called it the gay plague, and since black men were the ones dying, it wasn't something that they needed to worry about. It was only in 1998 when young student Matthew Shepard was tortured and beaten and left to die. And it was as recent as 2013, 4 years too late, when Californians finally realized that everyone should be able to marry the person they love and want to spend their lives with. We have made a lot of progress since then, but there is still work ahead. In 2020 and in 2021, we have seen an uptick in homicides of our black, gay, and lesbian trans brothers and sisters, and our trans black community is 3 times more likely to experience violence from police. So today, we need to get it together, and we need to reaffirm our commitment to our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, who are our family members and our friends. And we need to reaffirm our commitment to treating all people in this state with respect and dignity, regardless of who they love. I am fortunate that this month I will be celebrating the 7th wedding anniversary of my aunt Carol Lee to her wife Kelly. And I am glad that she was able to marry the person that she loves with dignity and respect and safety from violence. But not all of us have that. So I want to thank my colleague from Stockton for bringing this resolution forward, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Senator Becker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the senator from Stockton, the pro tem, the senators from Santa Cruz and San Francisco for your long leadership on this issue in your careers in public service, making life better for the next generation. I think the fact that young people today feel more comfortable coming out is a tribute to your work. I stand in support of this resolution. This month we honor the fearless, the trailblazers, the extraordinary, and also the everyday heroes of the LGBTQ plus movement in their fight for equal rights and in making, again, it possible and comfortable for all kids, all children, all people today to come out. You make us better aware also of the vital importance of recognizing and celebrating our true selves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Leyva.
Leyva? Sorry, thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, members. I too want to thank the Senator from Stockton and the LGBTQ Caucus for bringing SR 39 forward. I always like to get up and talk about a parent's perspective, as my colleague from Oakland did the same thing. And I like to do that because when you have a gay child, whether you want to be pulled into it or not, you see the way a lot of families treat their children when they come out to them. And it was really heartbreaking to me as a mom of a daughter who is gay to see some of her friends who are gay and how they were treated. The one that struck me the most was a brilliant young man in high school, and when he spoke 3 languages in high school, and when he came out to his parents, they kicked him out of the house, and they didn't welcome him back into their home for several years. So at that time, our daughters were in high school, and I just had an inkling that maybe Jessie was gay. And so I wanted to make sure she felt really welcome and knew that she could tell her parents anything and that we would always love her. So similar to my colleague from Oakland, I thought I would do something that would just really make her feel welcome. We always talked about at our house that you could disagree, we could argue about things. My husband and I wanted to hear their opinions. So when we were having one of these conversations, I said, you know, the only thing that will get you kicked out of the Leyva family is if you hurt small animals or you register Republican. So later, when our daughter came out to us, I said to her, I said, Jessie, did my little talk help you? And she said, no, Mother. She goes, I always knew I could tell you and Dad. So that made me feel really good. But I just think that parents who have gay children should always remember that the day they come out to you, they are the exact same person they were the day before. Love is love. My daughter is happily married to her wife. They have a little boy, our grandson, Nico, and there's nothing better than seeing your children, gay or straight, thrive in life. Thank you, and I support SR 39.
Thank you. Senator Rubio.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, today I also rise in strong support of SR 39. And I want to thank my colleague from Chino in discussing, the parent perspective, and I will share a little bit of my perspective as a teacher, just experiencing some students struggling with internal struggles on how to convey their story to their own parents, and it is exactly how the great senator from Chino stated. The children don't change, the people don't change, they're the same exact person that you loved before they came out to you. But I do want to just recognize all the progress we've made as a society, and also thank all the contributions that our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community have made, and there have been many, and a lot of the times they're overlooked or not highlighted. And in this Pride Month, I think it's just appropriate that we do. I don't want to reiterate what the great senator from Los Angeles stated, going back to our insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, to our pro tem, and so many others. But I just want to remind us that respect should always be present, tolerance should always be present, and solidarity with these communities should always be present, no matter what the month is. So I hope that we continue to move forward with love, respect, and dignity, and just always remember that the next generation is watching closely, and what we do matters, what we say matters, and our actions matter. And to all those watching, we want to make sure that they know that we stand in solidarity with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate on this item? Well, I want to thank my colleagues for a very heartfelt and robust discussion on a very important matter. Senator Eggman, would you like to close?
Thank you very much. I want to thank my colleagues for their kind and supportive comments. As someone who has now been with my wife 40 years, although the state has only acknowledged the last 7 of the years we have spent together, and in the early days we couldn't have dreamed of walking down the street holding hands without fear of harassment and assault, that we can now hold our little girl's hand between us as we walk down the street shows the progress we've made, but we still know that there's so much more to go on this road. So May we all be reminded that there is a rainbow on the other side of that storm, and to keep on striding towards that, where there is finally peace, love, and inclusion for all of us. As I ask for your aye vote, I would respectfully ask the clerk to read the names of the 12 LGBTQ plus Pride members honorees for 2021.